Marcus Chen stood at the observation deck of the Zix-Thara space station and looked out at the endless stars scattered across the black void of space. The station was a magnificent structure, built by multiple alien civilizations working together, and it represented everything humanity had fought for in the last 100 years: peace, cooperation, and coexistence among the stars. He was a tall man with dark hair that was beginning to show streaks of gray at the temples. His brown eyes reflected a calm that seemed almost unnatural in their steadiness, like still water in a storm. His face was kind, with gentle features that made most people underestimate him immediately. This was exactly how Marcus preferred things to be behind him, and the life of the station continued in its usual chaos. Aliens of every conceivable shape and size moved through the corridors, conducting business, making deals, and living their lives. The Vorthan Empire had the largest representation here, with their tall, muscular forms and silver skin gleaming under the artificial lights. The Zelian collective moved in coordinated groups, their insectoid bodies working in perfect synchronization. The peaceful Tauri floated gracefully through the corridors on their anti-gravity platforms, their translucent skin showing bioluminescent patterns. Marcus had been stationed here for 15 years as a human diplomat and representative. He had helped broker several important trade agreements, mediated disputes between warring factions, and then generally tried to improve humanity's standing in the galactic community. It was not easy work, especially when humans were viewed by most species as relatively new arrivals to the galactic stage. The Zix-Thara station had become his home in many ways. His official residence was in the diplomatic quarter, a beautiful suite with views of the station's central hub, but he rarely spent much time there anymore, choosing instead to work long hours in the diplomatic offices, preparing documents and strategies for humanity's future. A signal chimed softly on his wrist communication device. Marcus turned from the observation window and walked through the corridors toward the main diplomatic hall. He knew what this meeting would be about. He always knew what the meetings would be about. When he entered the hall, he found his wife waiting for him. Kalthar stood with the natural grace of her people, her silver skin reflecting the lights in shifting patterns. She was beautiful, there was no question about that. Her sharp features and powerful frame made her look every bit the warrior princess that she was. She was also absolutely furious. Kalthar was dressed in the traditional formal wear of the Vorthan Empire, a flowing white fabric that draped across her body and displayed the military medals she had earned. Her dark eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that would have made lesser men tremble. Marcus simply bowed slightly and waited for her to speak. This was another thing he had learned over the years. Waiting usually got results much faster than asking questions. "I have decided that we are attending the Vorthan royal ceremony tomorrow," Kalthar announced, her voice sharp as a blade. "And you will wear the formal human robes that I have selected for you, not whatever drab outfit you choose for yourself." "Of course," Marcus replied calmly. "What color did you choose?" "Gray," she said with obvious contempt. "The color of your weak species, the color of compromise and cowardice. Our people will see how fortunate you are to be married to one of the great warriors of our time." Other diplomats in the hall had stopped their conversations to watch this exchange. Some of them smiled, clearly enjoying the show of a human being put in his place by a superior. Marcus noticed their smiles and their judgmental eyes, but his own expression never changed. "I appreciate your thoughtfulness," he said. "Gray is actually quite practical for diplomatic functions. It allows the focus to remain on the important people at the ceremony." Kalthar's face flushed slightly. She clearly expected him to argue or at least show some sign of the resentment she wanted to provoke. Instead, his agreement seemed to frustrate her even more. "You are weak," she said, turning away from him sharply. All humans are weak. That is why your species will never be more than a footnote in galactic history, a footnote written by species with true power and true worth." She left the diplomatic hall without waiting for a response, her movements sharp and controlled. Marcus watched her go, his expression still perfectly calm. His colleagues stared at him with a mixture of pity and contempt. They had clearly expected more of a reaction from the human husband. Marcus returned to the observation window after the meeting concluded. The stars seemed to shine with their usual indifferent brightness. No matter what happened in the halls of diplomacy and politics, but the universe continued on unchanged and unconcerned. The truth was that Marcus had married Kael'thar as a political arrangement. This was common practice among diplomatic families. It had been agreed upon years ago that such a union would strengthen ties between humans and the Vorthon Empire. It seemed like a good idea at the time, before he truly understood the depth of Kael'thar's contempt for everything human. She had made it abundantly clear from the first day of their marriage that she considered him beneath her station. She refused to use his family name and insisted on calling him simply by his first name in private, or the human in public. She had removed his name from the family residence records and listed him only as spouse. She encouraged her Vorthon friends to mock him openly and seemed to derive genuine pleasure from his humiliation. Most beings in the galaxy would have tried to fight back or demanded a divorce. Marcus did neither. Instead, he observed, he watched how Kael'thar conducted her business, how she spoke to the other Vorthon warriors, what she cared about and what she dismissed. He listened to her conversations with her family members, where she made it clear that she found the entire marriage arrangement to be beneath her dignity. The other humans on the station seemed to view him with a mixture of embarrassment and resignation. They had expected one of their own to stand up to the injustice of his treatment, to demand respect and equality, but Marcus had simply accepted his situation with grace and continued his work as a diplomat. What none of them understood was that Marcus was not accepting his situation out of weakness. He was not accepting it out of love or hope for change. He was accepting it because he was watching and waiting for something important, something that was coming whether anyone realized it or not. He had noticed things over the years, small inconsistencies in the reported locations of Vorthon military vessels, strange communications between Kael'thar and individuals from other empires, unusual trade agreements that seemed to benefit certain hostile factions. The calm exterior that everyone mistook for weakness was actually the perfect mask for something else, something ancient and dangerous, something that had been building for a long time beneath the surface. Marcus looked out at the stars again and allowed himself the smallest of smiles. It was barely noticeable, just a slight curving of his lips. But it was there, and it suggested that perhaps, just perhaps, the quiet human was not nearly as weak as everyone believed. 3 weeks later, Marcus found the classified transmission in Kael'thar's private office while she was away at a Vorthon Empire function. It was encrypted with military-grade security, but he had long ago learned the access codes by watching her type them into her communication device. The message was written in Vorthan, a language he had become fluent in during their years of marriage. The content made his blood run cold. The Dominion of Shadows, one of the most hostile and aggressive empires in known space, had made Kael'thar an offer. They would give her a position as a regional governor in their expanding empire if she provided them with the exact defensive coordinates of every human colony, the latest human military protocols, and the locations of all human research stations. In exchange, they would pay her more wealth than she could spend in 100 lifetimes. They would also grant her command of a personal military fleet. And most importantly, so they had promised her that she would be allowed to watch as human worlds burned. The transmission ended with a simple acceptance message signed by Kael'thar herself. The date on the message was from 3 days ago. That meant the information about human colonies was already in enemy hands. That meant the greatest threat humanity had ever faced was now fully informed about where and how to strike. Marcus stood very still in the office, holding the data pad in his hands. The information seemed to burn against his palms, even though it was just a cold piece of technology. His calm exterior, the one that had served him so well for 15 years, began to crack just slightly. He accessed the security feed from his communication device and confirmed what he already suspected. Kael'thar had been meeting regularly with Dominion ambassadors in hidden chambers of the space station. These meetings had been happening for months. He had noticed the pattern in her schedule, but he had wanted to be absolutely certain before taking action. There was no doubt anymore. She had betrayed not just him, but every human being alive. Every child in every colony, every scientist researching new technologies to help humanity survive, every person who had ever believed in building a peaceful future among the stars. All of them had been sold out by his wife for wealth and power and the sadistic pleasure of watching her perceived enemies suffer. Marcus erased the evidence of his access and left Kael'thar's office exactly as he had found it. He went to his own quarters and changed into simple clothes. The formal gray robes that Kael'thar had chosen for him still hung in his closet, a symbol of everything wrong with his life. He ignored them. He waited in their shared quarters for Kael'thar to return from her function. It took 3 hours. She came through the door, flushed with victory and self-satisfaction, still wearing her formal Vorthon dress. "I have made an important decision about our future," she announced, without even looking at him. Moving directly to her personal chamber to remove her formal wear, Marcus followed her quietly. When she emerged, she was dressed in her casual home clothes, still radiating an air of power and satisfaction. "We should speak about your meetings with the Dominion of Shadows," he said calmly. Kael'thar froze. All the satisfaction drained from her face, replaced with shock and fury. She stared at him with an intensity that was almost physical. "How did you?" she began. Then her expression shifted to rage. "It does not matter. You are nothing but a human. You have no power here. You have no power anywhere. You cannot do anything to stop what is coming." "Tell me," Marcus said, his voice still perfectly level. "Tell me why you did this." Kael'thar laughed, on a harsh sound that echoed through their quarters. The laughter was filled with genuine cruelty and malice. "Because you are weak," she said. "All of your kind are weak. You play at being important. You pretend that you belong among the great civilizations of the galaxy, but you are nothing. You are children playing with toys you do not understand. Your colonies are populated by soft creatures who cannot fight and cannot lead. I have no love for you. I have never had love for you. Our marriage was a political arrangement, nothing more, nothing less. I have been counting the moments until I could be free of this humiliation." She moved closer to him, her silver skin gleaming in the light. Her dark eyes were filled with contempt and hatred. "I chose to marry you because your genetic line was acceptable for breeding stronger offspring, but nothing more. If I had known how truly pathetic humans were as a species, I would have refused the arrangement immediately. Instead, I suffered through years of your presence, listening to your weak ideas about peace and compromise." "And the Dominion?" Marcus asked, his voice unchanged. "You will watch human worlds burn?" "It will be a pleasure," Kael'thar said, smiling cruelly. "I will stand on the viewing platform of my new military fortress, and I will watch as your colonies are destroyed one by one. I will watch as your people are enslaved or killed. And I will know that I helped make it happen. I will know that my weakness of a husband's entire species will be erased from existence, and it will bring me joy every single day." She turned away from him, dismissing him completely the way she always did. That was when something changed in Marcus. Something that had been buried very deep for a very long time. Something that no one in the galaxy would have expected to find. His face remained calm. His expression did not change visibly, but his eyes became something different, something ancient and dangerous, something that suggested that perhaps the quiet human was not just stronger than they had realized. He was something else entirely. "You have made a grave mistake," Marcus said, his voice so quiet it was almost a whisper. But it carried an absolute certainty that made Kael'thar turn back to face him. She laughed again, but there was a note of uncertainty in it now. Just the smallest hint that perhaps she had underestimated something fundamental about the human standing before her that night. And Marcus packed a single bag with only the essentials. He left his diplomatic credentials on the table in their quarters. Along with them, he left a simple message in Vorthan script. It said only 2 words: the human response. He left the Zix-Thara space station on a private transport vessel, one that had been registered under a different name for a very long time. No one seemed to notice his departure or question it. Why would anyone care about a weak human diplomat leaving the station? There were hundreds of reasons why such a being might choose to leave in shame. But as Marcus sat in the cockpit of the small vessel, watching the station recede behind him, he was already sending messages ahead to Earth, messages that would set in motion events that would shake the very foundations of the galactic order. The quiet human was finally done being quiet, and the galaxy was about to learn exactly why silence was sometimes more terrifying than screaming. Marcus arrived at Earth after traveling through hidden routes and secret jump points that most ships did not even know existed. The journey took him 3 weeks, but every moment was necessary to avoid detection. The Dominion of Shadows would be looking for him now, along with Kael'thar and the Vorthan Empire. The planet appeared before him suddenly, on a blue and green jewel hanging in the darkness of space. It was home in a way that the Zix-Thara space station had never been. He descended through the atmosphere toward the North American continent, where the United Interstellar Defense Command had its primary headquarters. The UIDC facility was built into a mountain range, protected by layers of advanced technology that made it invisible to most scanning equipment. Marcus had designed much of that technology himself while working in the diplomatic corps. It had been a small gift to his homeland while he was supposedly devoted to his marriage and his diplomatic work. When he arrived at the hangar, he found Admiral Sarah Rodriguez waiting for him. She was a woman in her 60s with dark skin, as gray streaking through her black hair and eyes that showed the weight of knowing more than most people would ever understand. She had commanded the human space fleet for 15 years. "Marcus," she said, embracing him warmly, "I was wondering when you would finally come home." "The situation has accelerated faster than anticipated," Marcus said, moving with her toward the interior of the facility. "Kael'thar has betrayed our colony locations to the Dominion. We have limited time now, perhaps days before they launch their first attack." Admiral Rodriguez nodded as if this was expected information. She led him deeper into the facility, past security checkpoints and through corridors that seemed to descend endlessly into the Earth. Finally, they arrived at a massive command center. The walls were covered with holographic displays showing the current state of known space. Dozens of human officers were working at various stations, monitoring communications and tracking the movements of alien ships. What struck Marcus immediately was the scale of human military presence on these displays. There were ship classifications that the alien species knew nothing about. There were defense stations hidden throughout human space, camouflaged as mining operations or scientific research facilities. There were weapons platforms in orbit around Earth and the colony worlds, all invisible to external sensors. There were research stations developing technology that was decades, perhaps centuries, ahead of anything the other galactic powers possessed. "You have been a very busy species," Marcus said quietly, looking at the displays with a sense of wonder. "We have been busy doing what you always told us to do," Admiral Rodriguez said. "We watched, We learned, we planned, we built, we prepared, but we never drew attention to ourselves. We played the role of the weak newcomer species while developing the capabilities to defend ourselves and everyone who joins us voluntarily. She pointed to a specific area of space where 3 Dominion of Shadows ships were moving along a course toward human space. They have already launched their first attack wave, she continued. They came out of their territory yesterday. They are currently passing through neutral space toward the Kepler colony. We believe they will arrive within 6 hours. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. A cold, clear focus that he had been suppressing for 15 years. How long would it take to mobilize our full defensive fleet? He asked. We are already mobilizing, Admiral Rodriguez said. As of this moment, we are no longer playing the game of diplomacy and patient negotiation. The humans of this galaxy are done being underestimated. She moved to the main display and made a gesture that brought up the full scope of human military capability. It was breathtaking. Hundreds of warships, many of them larger and more advanced than anything the alien species had ever constructed, defense grids spanning multiple solar systems, weapon systems that operated on principles that no other civilization had even theorized about. We have been hiding this for so long that I thought we might never use it, Admiral Rodriguez said. But you were right, Marcus. You told us that eventually. We would have to choose between the safety of hiding and the necessity of defending our home. We are making that choice now. She looked directly at Marcus with an expression of absolute resolve. I am appointing you as strategic commander of all human forces effective immediately. You have studied every alien species in known space. You have lived among them. You understand how they think and how they make decisions. You understand their strengths and their weaknesses more than any other person alive. What about the diplomatic corps? Marcus asked. What about the peace we have been trying to build? Peace is a wonderful thing when both sides genuinely want it, Admiral Rodriguez replied. But we have learned something important watching the galaxy. The other species respect strength more than they respect kindness. They interpret our patience as weakness. They see our desire for peace as fear. We are going to teach them a different lesson. She activated new displays showing projected fleet movements and attack strategies. We will defend our colonies and our home, she continued. We will make the Dominion of Shadows regret ever thinking we were vulnerable. We will make the Vorthan Empire understand that they cannot simply ally with our enemies without consequences, and we will ensure that every species in known space learns that humanity is not a footnote in galactic history. We are the beginning of a new era. Marcus looked at the plans and strategies laid out before him. They were beautiful in their precision and ruthless in their execution. He saw the future mapped out in holographic display. He saw humanity taking its rightful place as a major power in the galaxy, not through conquest and domination, but through overwhelming capability and intelligent deployment of resources. How long until we are ready to mobilize the full fleet, he asked. We are ready now, Admiral Rodriguez said. See, every weapon is charged, every ship is crewed, every strategic position is occupied. We have been ready for years. We have simply been waiting for the moment when hiding was no longer an option. She stepped closer to Marcus and placed a hand on his shoulder. The question is not whether we are ready. The question is whether you are ready for this, Marcus. You have spent 15 years being what the galaxy wanted you to be, a weak, human diplomat, a pathetic creature beneath the notice of the great powers, but that was a role. Now the role is over and you need to decide who you truly are. Marcus looked at the displays around him, showing humanity's true capability, the ships and stations and weapons that had been built in secret while he played the part of a powerless diplomat. Who am I? He asked, almost to himself. You are the person who designed most of this technology while pretending to be weak, Admiral Rodriguez said. You are the person who has spent your entire life gathering intelligence on every major power in the galaxy. You are the person who married a Vorthan warrior princess and endured her contempt, so that you could understand exactly how her empire thinks. You are the person who has been waiting for this moment to finally show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of. She activated a final display showing every human asset in known space. The scope of it was staggering. "You are Strategic Commander Marcus Chen," Admiral Rodriguez said. "And you are about to change the entire galactic order." Marcus felt the weight of that responsibility settle onto his shoulders like a mantle. He had spent 15 years in exile from his true potential, pretending to be weak when he was actually studying the most sophisticated military possibilities. The quiet human was finally home, and the galaxy had no idea what was about to hit them. The first human strike was so sudden and so devastating that the galaxy had no time to properly understand what was happening. The Dominion of Shadows fleet that was moving toward the Kepler colony never made it there. When they came within striking distance of that human settlement, they found themselves surrounded by human warships that seemed to materialize from nowhere like ghosts, becoming solid. The battle lasted 40 minutes from beginning to end, and it was a complete and total annihilation. The Dominion fleet that had expected to face primitive human defenses instead encountered a coordinated military response that was flawless and overwhelming. Their weapons were outdated compared to human technology. Their tactics were transparent to human strategists. Their ships were slow and vulnerable to the precision strikes that rained down upon them. Not a single Dominion ship escaped. The entire invasion force was destroyed with such efficiency that it seemed like the galaxy had been watching a master teaching a lesson to an inferior student. And humanity was the master. But the destruction of the invasion fleet was just the beginning. 3 days later, human fleets emerged from hidden bases throughout known space. They had been waiting in hidden pockets of space for this moment, were cloaked and invisible to every scanning system that the alien species possessed. The Dominion of Shadows homeworld found itself surrounded by human warships in orbit above its surface. The human commander sent a simple message to the surface: "We have arrived. Stop your aggression against human space, or face the consequences of your actions." The Dominion leadership tried to resist at first. They launched their planetary defense systems and sent out desperate calls for help. They thought surely that other galactic powers would come to their aid, that humanity could not truly be powerful enough to threaten them. But the other powers were busy. The Vorthan Empire, Kalthar's own people, decided to intervene militarily when they received reports that human ships were threatening one of the major powers in the galaxy. This was meant to be a show of strength, a demonstration that humanity could not simply do as they pleased without facing opposition from more advanced civilizations. The Vorthan fleet mobilized and moved toward the Dominion of Shadows homeworld. They were one of the most feared military powers in known space. Their ships had conquered multiple civilizations. Their warriors had never been defeated in direct combat. Their reputation alone was enough to make most species cower in fear. When the Vorthan fleet arrived at the coordinates where the Dominion of Shadows was located, now they found themselves facing something far different than what they expected. There were human warships waiting for them. More warships than should have existed according to every intelligence report. The engagement that followed was not really a battle in the traditional sense. It was more like watching a professional military force deal with an army of students. A human fleet of 300 ships faced a Vorthan fleet of 200 ships. The Vorthan Empire had expected this to be a straightforward victory for them. They had superior experience in direct combat. Their soldiers had been trained in warfare for thousands of years, but they had never faced anything like human technology. They had never faced the precision and coordination of a human fleet operating under a unified strategic command. The first volley of human weapons fire. They destroyed 30 Vorthan ships before they could even return fire. The second volley destroyed another 40 ships. Within 6 minutes of contact, the Vorthan fleet was effectively destroyed. Not because they lacked courage or ability, but because they were facing something fundamentally superior in every way. That was the harsh reality that the galaxy was beginning to understand. Humanity was superior not in individual warriors or tactical bravery, but in the systematic coordination of advanced technology and flawless strategy. The Vorthan survivors retreated with their remaining ships signaling their surrender. The Dominion of Shadows promptly surrendered as well. What was the point of resistance when facing an enemy that could destroy you in minutes without taking any losses? The human fleet continued its systematic demonstrations throughout known space. First, they surrounded the major military strongholds of 3 minor galactic powers who had been planning to join the Dominion of Shadows in attacking human space. In each case, the human ships simply appeared in orbit and transmitted a simple message: "Do not attack humans." The response was always immediate surrender. The galaxy was watching these events unfold on galactic news networks. And the shock was nearly universal. Humanity, the young species that had been considered weak and unimportant for so long, was suddenly revealed to be the most advanced and most powerful force in known space. Marcus watched the reports from the command center as each battle unfolded, and as each alien species responded to the presence of human fleets. The responses fell into categories: immediate surrender without firing a shot or desperate attempts at resistance that all ended the same way, with human forces destroying the opposition without taking meaningful casualties. "Have we made our point?" Admiral Rodriguez asked him during a briefing. "Not yet," Marcus said. "We need the Vorthan Empire to understand that we are not simply more powerful. We need them to understand that their civilization, as they know it, is over. They have been a dominant power for thousands of years. They will not accept defeat easily." He looked at the tactical displays showing the current positioning of the Vorthan homeworld and what remained of their fleet. "We need to do something that will make them understand the complete shift in power," Marcus continued. "Something that will make it clear that their old ways of thinking are obsolete." 2 days later, human forces made a coordinated strike on every major Vorthan military facility simultaneously. The planetary defense systems were neutralized, the orbital stations were destroyed, the mining colonies were secured, the military academies were surrounded, ships containing Vorthan warriors trying to flee were systematically intercepted and brought under control. It was not a massacre because Marcus had given explicit orders that the destruction should be precise and surgical. Civilian areas were left untouched. The destruction was limited to military and strategic targets, but the message was unmistakable. The Vorthan Empire was no longer in control of its own destiny. When it was over, the Vorthan leadership realized something that no Vorthan ruler had ever realized before. They had been defeated completely and utterly. They had no way to continue the fight because their enemy had technology and strategy that they simply could not counter. A delegation from the Vorthan Empire arrived at the human command center orbiting their homeworld. They came with authority to negotiate terms of peace and to accept whatever conditions humanity demanded. It was then that Marcus appeared on a galactic broadcast. He sat in a simple chair with no symbols of military rank or political power behind him. Just a man who had been underestimated and overlooked for so long that everyone had forgotten to be afraid of what he represented. "I am Marcus Chen, Strategic Commander of Human Forces," he said, his voice calm and measured. "Today, the galaxy has learned something important. It has learned that humanity is not weak. We are not insignificant. We are not inferior. Our patience was not fear. It was strategy. Our kindness was not weakness. It was choice. We could have destroyed you all years ago. We could have simply taken what we needed. We could have conquered the galaxy as our own. But we chose a different path. We chose to build instead of destroy, to develop instead of conquer, to understand instead of dominate." He leaned forward slightly. "But you have tested that patience. You have shown that you do not respect kindness, and you do not understand choice. You attempted to enslave our people. You attempted to murder our citizens. So now you will learn what we are truly capable of. The Dominion of Shadows has agreed to surrender completely. The Vorthan Empire has agreed to full demilitarization. The lesser powers have agreed to protection treaties that favor human interests. Going forward, any species that wishes to exist peacefully may do so with human friendship. Any species that poses a threat to human safety will find themselves erased from history. That is not a threat. It is a statement of fact. He looked directly into the camera with eyes that showed no mercy and no weakness. Humanity does not seek conquest. We seek respect. And now you will give it to us, not because you want to, but because you have no choice. We are the dominant power in known space, and everyone who watches this broadcast needs to understand that fact very clearly. The broadcast ended. The galaxy fell silent as the implications became clear. Humanity was no longer the minor species that other civilizations tolerated. Humanity was the force that all other civilizations would now answer to. The new galactic order was established not through mercy, but through overwhelming capability, and the universe would never be the same. 3 months had passed since the last military engagement, and the galaxy had finally begun to accept the new reality that humanity was the dominant power in known space. The transition had been swift and surprisingly orderly. Alien governments that had previously ignored human interests now sent ambassadors and trade representatives to negotiate favorable terms, with the United Human Collective Trade Agreements shifted dramatically in humanity's favor. Species that had once imposed heavy tariffs on human goods now offered competitive rates in exchange for access to human technology. The Zix-Thara space station, which had once been a place where humans struggled for basic respect. It now flew the human flag prominently alongside the flags of other allied species. Humans were promoted to positions of authority throughout the station's administrative structure. Marcus had been offered countless positions of power. He was given the opportunity to become the high diplomat for all of human affairs, essentially ruling over all human interactions with alien species. He was offered the position of Supreme Military Commander with authority over the entire human defense fleet. He was offered a seat on the new Galactic Council that would determine the future policies affecting all species in known space. He had declined every single one of these offers. Instead, he had created something new. The Peace and Reconciliation Division was a small organization dedicated to ensuring that future conflicts between species would be resolved through dialogue and understanding rather than military force. Marcus served as its director, but he rarely used the title, preferring to think of himself as a facilitator of peace. His colleagues in the government thought he was wasting his talent, that someone who had just reshaped the entire galactic order should be in a position of more obvious power. But Marcus understood something that most people did not. True power was not in command or control. True power was in the ability to choose what you would and would not do with your strength. The UIDC headquarters had become a hub of diplomatic activity where representatives from dozens of species came to negotiate trade, at agreements and established treaties. All of them came with a mixture of respect and wariness. They respected humanity's power, but they were wary of what might happen if they displeased their new overlords. It was in this atmosphere of change and uncertainty that Marcus received word that Kael'thar had petitioned for a direct meeting with him. She was now stripped of all titles and authority. Her position in the Vorthan Empire had been eliminated when the Empire agreed to full demilitarization. She had been replaced as commander of any military forces. She had no power and no privilege. She had nothing Marcus could have chosen to execute her. He could have had her imprisoned for life. He could have used her as a symbol of human dominance, forcing her to serve as a slave or a prisoner on display, but instead, that he did something that surprised everyone who heard about it. He agreed to meet with her. Kael'thar appeared before him in a neutral chamber on the Zix-Thara station. She was smaller somehow, or perhaps that was only because she was no longer radiating the confidence that had always surrounded her. She wore no medals, no decorations, no symbols of rank. Her silver skin seemed to have lost some of its luster. She looked like a warrior who had been defeated, not in combat, but in her understanding of the world. Marcus sat across from her in a simple chair. He had no weapons, no guards, no show of force behind him, just a man who had been patient enough to wait for this moment. "I expected to be executed," Kael'thar said, her voice much quieter than it had been before. "Nay, that would be my fate if our positions were reversed. I would have you killed without hesitation and without mercy. Why am I still alive? Why have you not destroyed me as you have destroyed everything that I valued?" Marcus considered her for a moment. His face showed no emotion, no satisfaction at her downfall, no pleasure in her suffering. "Because you are someone who can change," he said finally. "You believe that strength came from domination and conquest. Those are the only lessons your culture taught you. You learned to value military power and to view kindness as weakness. That is not your fault. It is the fault of a civilization that taught you to see the galaxy in those limited terms." "I would not have spared you," Kael'thar said. "I would have watched you burn along with every human in existence." "Yes," Marcus agreed. And that is why I am offering you something you do not deserve. I am offering you redemption. I am offering you the chance to help rebuild the colonies that you helped destroy. I am offering you the opportunity to work toward genuine peace between humans and the Vorthan Empire." "Why would you do this?" Kael'thar asked, and there was genuine confusion in her voice. "You have won. You have the power to take everything. You have the power to rule everything. What would you possibly gain from offering me redemption?" Marcus smiled slightly, a small expression of genuine warmth. "Because true strength is not shown in what you can destroy," he said. "A true strength is shown in what you can choose not to destroy. It is shown in the ability to offer mercy to someone who did not offer it to you. It is shown in the willingness to help lift someone up instead of keeping them down. That is what separates us from what you tried to make of us. That is what makes humanity worth believing in." Kael'thar left the chamber with new orders. She would oversee the reconstruction projects on 3 human colonies that had been damaged during the brief conflict between the Vorthan Empire and human forces. It would be difficult work, and it would require her to cooperate with humans to work alongside the people she had tried to destroy, but it was an opportunity to become something other than the warrior princess who had betrayed her own husband 6 months later on a newly rebuilt colony world. Marcus stood watching the sunset with Admiral Rodriguez. The colony was thriving. Green plants grew in the reconstructed gardens, and buildings rose from the ground as workers completed the final stages of construction. Both human and Vorthan workers moved together across the landscape, building something new from what had been destroyed. "Do you regret it?" Admiral Rodriguez asked. "Do you regret showing them our strength and forcing them to accept our dominance?" "I regret that it was necessary," Marcus said, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun was dipping below the distant mountains. "I regret that we could not achieve this through dialogue and understanding alone. I regret that some beings only respect power when it is shown to them in unmistakable terms. But I do not regret the action itself. We had to defend our home. We had to ensure that no species would ever again think that they could simply attack human worlds without consequences." He was silent for a moment. "But now that they understand our strength, perhaps they will finally listen when we speak of peace," Marcus continued. "And perhaps they will understand that we are not tyrants seeking to dominate them. Perhaps they will understand that we simply wanted to live in safety among the stars. And perhaps that will lead to something better than just dominance. It will lead to genuine cooperation and genuine respect." The sun continued to sink below the horizon, leaving behind brilliant colors of orange and red and purple streaking across the sky. The colony was quiet now as the workers finished their day and returned to their homes. The future stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibility. Humanity had come from being overlooked and underestimated to being the dominant force in known space. But more importantly, humanity had proven that it was possible to be strong without being cruel. It was possible to have overwhelming power without using it for conquest. It was possible to be merciful while still being absolute in your defense of your home. The quiet human had become the symbol of that possibility. Marcus Chen had spent 15 years appearing weak while actually growing stronger. He had endured humiliation while actually gathering the knowledge and understanding that would allow him and his species to reshape the galaxy. He had waited patiently while others mocked him for his weakness all along, knowing what was coming all along, understanding what humanity was truly capable of. And now the galaxy knew the truth. The human was not weak. The human had simply been waiting, and when the moment came to act, he and his species had changed everything. The new galactic order had been established not through tyranny, but through strength combined with wisdom and restraint. The most powerful force in known. Space was not driven by conquest or domination, but by a genuine desire to help civilizations understand that there was a better way to exist among the stars, a way based on mutual respect and genuine peace. And as the sun set on the colony world, Marcus Chen looked out at the future that humanity would help build, a future that was finally, at long last, truly their own.